Here's something you guys need to know about me. I love the Fantastic Four. Like, a lot. The Fantastic Four were created in 1961 by writer Stan Lee and artist Jack Kirby, establishing themselves as Marvel's first family of superheroes. Longtime friends Reed Richards and Ben Grimm, along with siblings Sue and Johnny Storm, one day decided to work together on a dangerous scientific mission that would change their lives forever. After coming into contact with cosmic rays, their bodies were permanently transformed, giving them superhuman abilities that they would use to protect the world from danger. Believe it or not, the Fantastic Four actually predates several Marvel characters that we all know and love, such as Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, the X-Men, and just to name a few. It's also widely speculated as to whether or not the Fantastic Four were Marvel's response to the undeniable success of DC's Justice League, which was created the year prior. When I was a kid, I always thought the whole First Family moniker was just a catchy tagline, but in reality, it was a statement saying that these characters were kicking off a new era of Marvels. An era that would lead to countless iconic storylines, supporting characters, and adaptations that would inspire audiences around the world. It's safe to say that without the Fantastic Four, Marvel Comics would not have been the massive sales juggernaut it is today. Pun slightly intended. I'm the juggernaut! Moving on. Without a doubt, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby co-created a team of superheroes that went on to define Marvel as we know it. However, it is divisive as to who was actually responsible for the team's creation. Kirby would go on to state that he came up with the idea for the team, and Stan was only there to be in charge of dialogue. Now, sources that have come out since then suggest that Kirby wasn't exactly in the right headspace at the time of these statements. Since it was never made clear what was true or what wasn't, I don't have a solid answer for you. Do I have my own opinion on the matter? Absolutely. Is it a topic that's too complicated for this video but maybe significant enough of a subject to have a video of its own in the future? Oh buddy, you don't know the half of it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Today I want to talk about Marvel's first family themselves. But first, we need to go back to where it all started. This comic fucking sucks, dude. It's not great. It's actually not good at all. Here's the thing about comic books that you need to understand. I get it when people say that getting into comics is hard. It's no easy task. But McVader, you might be asking, even though I obviously cannot hear you. Why not just start at issue 1? For the love of God, please, please do not do that. I plan on making a video one day where I give you my advice on how to get into comics, but I'll tell you right now that one of the most crucial steps is that you will not go back 60 plus years to track down the very first issue of your favorite character. Not only will it take you an unfathomable amount of time to read up to the modern day, but you will more than likely be put off on your journey right off the bat. Because boy, oh boy, let me tell you, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but comic books from the 1960s are a chore to read, especially the ones written by Stan Lee. While I have my own personal opinions regarding Stan Lee as stated earlier, I'm not here to waste our time going on various tangents about it. But one thing that I believe should be made clear is that Stan was a very unique writer in the comic book industry. He was without a doubt the voice of Marvel, both literally and figuratively. You see, in comics, there's this way of writing referred to as the Marvel method. It was a collaborative approach invented in the 1950s where the writer, in this case Stan Lee, would draw up a rough outline for a story, which he would then present to an artist, Jack Kirby in this case, who would then draw story beats, only for the writer to come in afterward and insert all the dialogue. This method had allegedly become a pillar for the company due to Stan claiming he didn't have enough time to write full scripts for books. Ultimately, what this led to were books drawn by Jack Kirby with narration and dialogue written by Stan that was basically describing what the reader was seeing on the page. This style of writing was present in nearly every comic written by Stan, and while I do believe there have been many cases where it was used to craft a good story, I would argue that most times it led to the majority of his books feeling way too wordy, even for comic book standards. featuring pages with glorious art by Jack Kirby that were more often than not smothered by Stan's writing. Unfortunately, the first issue of the Fantastic Four suffers from this, in my opinion. I think it should be noted that comic books back in the 1960s were very reflective of that time period. They would feature more campy stories with humorous characters, since children were the primary audience at the time. This was a period before stories like The Dark Knight Returns, widely known for forcing a tonal shift in the industry, had been brought to life, meaning this was still a time when writers didn't think to put a lot of deeper meaning into their stories. While I personally don't prefer to read books from this era since we're living in the big 2025, and I just, quite frankly, I just don't want to, I can't deny the impact that comics from that era had, and are the very reason I'm sitting here talking to you guys today. I'm not here to trash on older comics whatsoever. I just think it's important to note just how different they were all those years ago compared to now. With that said, they're still unbearably hard to read. Now that all this is out of the way, let's dive into the first issue. The first page features a mysterious cloud forming in the sky above New York, featuring a large bold text that reads, "The Fantastic Four." There's already a lot to unpack here, unfortunately. I know it's a sci-fi fantasy, but how the hell is this even physically possible? Now, I have no idea who came up with this idea, but I'm assuming it was Stan Lee. Can you imagine him even pitching this idea to Jack Kirby out loud?
Hey there, true believer. You know how the f***ing Batman over there at DC has his light that shines in the sky? What if the Fantastic Four had a flare gun that he could shoot into the f***ing sky, and then the clouds could spell out Fantastic Four? What do you think, Jack? What do you think of that idea?
You guys know that feeling when you're talking to one of your friends and they say something so outlandish and you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you kind of just nod along to it? I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Jack Kirby did the entirety of his career with Stan. Surprisingly, that's not even the funniest thing about this page. As soon as you open the book, you're introduced to the members of the Fantastic Four so nonchalantly, for lack of a better term. There's literally a red arrow pointing to them with the text reading, "Here they are." Here they are, I guess. The first time we're introduced to Reed Richards apart from that strange panel is at the bottom of this page, where he is standing at a window holding a gun menacingly lit by red lighting. For context, Reed sent the flare, which I'm going to call the 4 signal, to alert his friends that they need to join forces immediately to stop a dangerous threat. We're then introduced to each member of the team one by one. Sue Storm is busy having tea with a society friend, then turns invisible and just kind of bails on her, when in reality it might have been easier for her to just say goodbye first and then leave, but her friend basically just thinks Sue just kind of evaporated out of thin air and she's never coming back. She then makes her way to the 4 signal, causing lots of hijinks with her invisibility powers. We then cut to Ben Grimm, who is currently disguised Ninja Turtle style in a classic trench coat and hat. But then he just ditches all of it after spotting the signal, when in reality he could have just kept it on. Whatever. As soon as he gets out, the police open fire on him, resulting in Ben escaping into the sewers. One of the police officers believes it impossible to lift open a manhole cover with your bare hands, even though he literally just came across a man made of rocks. We finally cut to Johnny busy getting his car fixed, but as soon as he spots the signal, he sets himself on fire inside the car, then shoots a hole into the roof, fleeing the scene, completely melting the vehicle, by the way. When all he had to do was just step out of the car. He would have avoided probably thousands of dollars in damages if he just stepped out of the car first. Basically what I'm getting at is the Fantastic Four are not introduced to be the most intelligent characters that we know them to be. They're actually quite stupid. This is further proven when the comic flashes back to the team's origin, where we find them debating as to whether or not they should proceed with their mission into space. Ben refuses to fly the rocket, believing Reed hasn't done enough research to qualify as safe travel, only for Sue to basically tell him no balls, which forces him to accept toxic masculinity at its finest. The team breaks into the space station, steals the rocket, then flies up into space, only for them to immediately be hit by cosmic rays, causing them to crash land back on Earth. The 4 survive but are granted superhuman abilities. Sue can turn invisible, Ben's skin transforms into a rock-like material, Reed can stretch his body, and John lights on fire, which he is weirdly calm about upon finding this out. Ben is reasonably upset and lashes out in anger, only for Reed to use his powers on him, claiming he had it coming. It's not like the guy warned you not to go up into space. I don't know. I think Ben might be the most reasonable character in this entire book. Once they've calmed down, Reed immediately gives a speech to the others that they need to become Once they've calmed down, Reed immediately gives a speech to the others that they need to become superheroes. Then they fight the Mole Man, and that's pretty much it. No moral of the story, no real character motivations, just a very straightforward series of events. There, now you do not have to read it. It's all good. You're welcome. Now, I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice if I made this video without dedicating some time to talk about all 4 members of the Fantastic Four individually. These are deeply layered people, and each serves a unique importance to the family. And since I don't know when I'll get to discuss the Fantastic Four next, I'm just gonna break it down for you. Let's start with Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, a name that he gave himself, by the way, if that tells you anything about him. In all seriousness, Reed is one of the most fascinating characters I've come across in the world of comics. Considered to be the smartest man on Earth, Reed is a passionate scientist, inventor, and adventurer, but above all that, he loves his family. As the leader of the team, Reed is normally the one responsible for getting the 4 involved in all their sci-fi fantasy shenanigans, and I find it to be an exhilarating experience as a reader when he comes up with new, genius ways to overcome any obstacle. He's often perceived to be a one-dimensional character whose intelligence is his one defining characteristic, but if you dive into the deep end of the thousands of Fantastic Four stories out there, you will soon learn that Reed is someone whose main goal is to look for the logic in impossible things and protect his family and the world that surrounds them. I consider Reed to be the luckiest man on Earth. No, not because of his intelligence or his cool superpowers, but the fact that he got to marry Sue Storm. Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, is one of my favorite characters in all of comic books. I made a top 10 list actually of my favorite comic book characters recently, and I'm not joking, she made the top 3. Believe it or not, I'm sure that's most likely one of the hottest takes I've ever put out there. But I personally think that Sue might be one of the greatest written characters in Marvel Comics, at least. She's often perceived as the mother of the team, and I have to agree, because she's always mothering and slaying all over the comics she's in. I think I'll just move on, sorry. Sue is the most powerful member of the team, capable of not just turning invisible, but also manipulating light and creating force fields large enough to protect entire cities. She is undoubtedly the glue holding the team together, capable of keeping the boys on track and making sure her family is protected at all costs. While Reed is the leader of the team, if it weren't for Sue's authentic disposition, one could argue that the very core of the team would be non-existent. Sue's brother, Johnny Storm, is almost the exact opposite. Johnny is the exact definition of a hothead, both figuratively and most certainly literally. His pyrokinetic abilities allow him to fly at supersonic speeds, generate and manipulate fire, and attract women at alarming rates. Okay, that last part isn't a superpower. He just really likes women, okay? Johnny holds his family near and dear to his heart and is never unwilling to put his life on the line for his sister and the others. He keeps the team young, but is never a stranger to getting on their nerves. So we have Reed, the genius, Sue, the linchpin, and Johnny, the rebel. But here's the thing. God, I love him. I love him so much. Ben Grimm is arguably the most famous member of the Fantastic Four. He's practically the team's mascot both in reality and in fiction. Ben unfortunately drew the short straw in regards to obtaining his superpowers when the cosmic rays transformed his skin into a rock-like material that caused the worst case of insecurity I think I've ever seen a fictional character go through. Ben is a hot-tempered cynic whose internal conflict feels as though it's unending. Although he has grown accustomed to his more monstrous appearance, there is still a part of him that desires to be normal again. He walks around believing himself to be a mistake or a joke in the eyes of the people that he loves. Although this isn't true, Ben is a great example of a character who represents self-loathing in a way that gives readers someone to relate to or empathize with. I think it's quite poetic that Ben is considered to be the more iconic character on the team, because it proves how loved he truly is, not just by his family, but by people around the world. This part of the video got way more emotional than I was expecting, so I'm going to make a very uninspired segue to the next section. Some might say things have been grim lately. Okay, sorry, I'll stop. The Fantastic Four, as stated before, began a new era in comics known to many as the era of Marvels. They became celebrities, icons of their time, and would begin to evolve over the decades that passed, just like every other character in comics did. However, this did lead to some very minor pitfalls, especially in the 1990s. The 90s were an interesting time for comics, to say the least. It was a time of unapologetic edginess that led to editors making some changes that readers would remember forever. This was the decade when Superman died, died and Batman got his back broken. This was also the decade when several artists from both Marvel and DC decided to stick it to the man and found Image Comics, which led to popular franchises such as Spawn, The Walking Dead, Savage Dragon, Invincible, just to name a few. This was also the decade where Marvel went bankrupt, forcing them to sell the movie rights to their characters, which led to the Sony Spider-Man movies, the Fox X-Men movies, and the formation of the MCU as we know it. It was an especially eventful decade in more ways than one, but it was very questionable for the Fantastic Four. Sue got a brand new, very provocative costume, which even by 90s standards I still can't believe they thought was a good idea, as well as an attempt at creating a new Fantastic Four, which featured Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hulk, and Ghost Rider. This obviously didn't end up going anywhere. There was an entire movie that got produced, edited, and finished that was never released due to the fact that it was only made so Marvel could keep the film rights to the characters. Even to this day, the film has never been officially released, but it can easily be found on YouTube, which f***ing sucks, because even though it's bad, it still looks like there was so much love and passion put into it that I've never seen before or since. It really grinds my gears. I don't know what else to say. Meanwhile, in the comics, during a crossover event where the powerful X-Men villain Onslaught made his debut, which is a whole basket case on its own. The team was sent into a pocket reality where they lived out various adventures until finally returning with little to no memory as to what happened. Sounds complicated, right? I'm not even going to talk about Sue Storm's evil doppelganger named Malice, who totally wasn't an excuse for artists to draw her in even more provocative clothing than before. How could you possibly even think that? That's just too much for me to get into right now. We're gonna move on. The point is, the Fantastic Four went through quite a lot in the 90s. This unfortunately included a decline in sales, which was common in most comics during that decade. There would be multiple attempts at reviving the team's sales over the next few years, but it wasn't until the year 2002 when well-established comic book writer Mark Waid stepped on board. During the 90s, Waid had made history when he wrote the critically acclaimed book Kingdom Come for DC, which had left a permanent impact on the comic book industry and turned him into a superstar. He had done work on characters such as The Flash and Captain America, which fans quickly considered to be some of the best runs for both characters. When Waid decided to write for the Fantastic Four, fans were undeniably excited for what could have possibly been in store. It quickly became a critical success, and to this day is well known to be a fan favorite. Fantastic Four number 60 was released in 2002, written by Mark Waid with art by Mike Wieringo, and it was this very issue that inspired me to make this video in the first place. Also, there's a movie coming out. I'm sure you're all asking, McVader, did you seriously release a Fantastic Four video alongside the release of First Steps as a way to capitalize on their popularity? Well, Fantastic Four number 60 opens with an advertising department working as hard as they can to find new ways to keep the team relevant and boost their celebrity profile for the modern day. Public relations manager Mr. Qkthr is given the task, and he makes it known to the room that this won't be an easy job. He's used to working with rock stars, not superheroes. He seems intimidated, and you can tell the pressure is already piling onto him. Regardless, he goes through with the job, deciding to spend a week assessing the Fantastic Four up close and personally. And the next time we see him, he's caught in the middle of a space vessel, floating through a pocket dimension known as the Leviaverse, a space full of massive, horrifying creatures looking to eat him alive. However, while Qkthr is shaking in his boots, terrified for his life, he's caught in the middle of Johnny and Ben arguing with each other over the fact that Johnny didn't use the bathroom before tagging along in their adventure. Meanwhile, Reed and Sue are up front, steering the ship, but find themselves distracted by the bickering and attempt to quiet them down. They're making Mr. Qkthr nervous. Outside the vessel, a gargantuan creature floats past, so Reed decides it's now or never as the team exits the ship and lands atop the creature's body. While Reed attempts to extract valuable information, the team defends him, fighting back against the ferocious monsters. Before they even make it back to the ship, the team is already back to discussing whether or not they should stop for ice cream, all while Qkthr is still on the ship, totally perplexed by their confidence. As Qkthr asks if they do this kind of stuff often, Reed simply replies with, "Do what? Take a Sunday drive?" Upon their return to the Baxter building, the Force home and base of operations, the team is greeted by Reed and Sue's son Franklin, eager to see the new macro atom that his father brought back. Meanwhile, his little sister Valeria is currently at daycare on the moon, because why not? Sue, Johnny, and Ben spend the bulk of the issue trying to figure out why Reed hired Qkthr to observe the team. Reed was never one to care much for their celebrity status, more so focused on his scientific research. However, they go along with it, allowing Qkthr to follow them around for the week. Of course, antics ensue, ensues as Qkthr takes part in life-threatening situations that the Fantastic Four experience day to day. This includes fixing the Baxter Building security system via Sue's invisible force field, holding them hundreds of feet above the streets of New York City, while he holds on to Sue for dear life. That lucky bastard. As the week continues, Qkthr witnesses the team go about their lives by defending their home from interdimensional monsters, traveling to other dimensions, and risking their lives defending the people around them. Qkthr is clearly stressed the hell out, and can't seem to comprehend how the team manages to stay so nonchalant the whole time. Meanwhile, the team notices that Reed wasn't invited to the Cause Cerebral event, an annual get-together involving the world's top geniuses. Reed had attended every year since he was 17, but mysteriously was left out this time. The team believes that Qkthr had something to do with this, and they immediately get to work on defending Reed, claiming him to be the most smartest, humblest man they've ever known. But in between all of that, there's one thing that catches Qkthr's attention.
Clearly, the other three are all adventurers at heart, but most of the time, Johnny fiddles with cars, Sue wrestles with motherhood, and Ben watches a lot of WWE. They don't tend to navigate the Amazon or explore rat-infested catacombs just cuz. On the other hand, if Reed wants to investigate some civilization he found living on the side of an electron, they'll jump in and run interference without hesitation. It's that kind of help that allows Richards to focus on scientific breakthroughs that, well, not to overstate, but that could possibly pioneer the future of the human race. My God, does his family realize how much they contribute to that? Is that why they do what they do?
Why did you think?
Because you're superheroes?
Heh. Funny.
Qkthr continues to observe the team's day-to-day lives for the remainder of the week. When he finally meets with a pair of his colleagues, they prepare a rough concept for how they can boost the sales of the Fantastic Four comics. They display them with extremely exaggerated costumes and focus on their widescreen appeal first and foremost. It doesn't take a genius to realize that this is a clear parody of how the Fantastic Four were handled in the 1990s, literally reverting to that one Will Smith hype moment and aura meme from the movie I, Robot. Such a strange reference to include in the middle of this essay, but anyway, Qkthr believes they have it all wrong. The Fantastic Four aren't superheroes. Not really. They're astronauts, envoys, adventurers, and explorers. Sure, when someone or something steps in and attempts to take over or destroy the world, they'll be the first to stand on the front lines of defense, but it was never about that for them. Qkthr says it best as he and his team leave the building, suggesting that if you want to make a Fantastic Four comic, you have to make it about the people and not the costumes. As the team exits through the elevator, Reed can be seen in the background holding his daughter Valeria. When the two are alone, he decides to tell his daughter a story.
Once upon a time, there was a genius a very bright man who Once upon a time, there was a very arrogant man who did something very stupid. Without proper preparation or shielding, he took his friends through a wave of radiation that made them all something other than human. His guilt was unbearable, and deserved. These were people he loved, and he destroyed their lives. Thanks to him, they were fated to be freaks, lab specimens or worse. Unless he changed that fate somehow. Unless he made the world see them for what they were. 3 of the best and bravest people anyone could hope to meet. So he refused to let them operate in secret. He gave them a home in a city of 8 million, and he gave them costumes, and a flying car, and encouraged them to parade around with some pretty outlandish names. Mr. Fantastic. Does that sound like something anyone would really want to call themselves? No, but that's the kind of thing that made headlines, and t-shirts, and action figures. He knew that would keep people from fearing them. You see, glamour and fame weren't options, they were necessities. Because maybe by turning his friends into celebrities, he could be forgiven for taking their normal lives away. Someday.
I said I'd tell him. Hey, Stretcho, you know how you told us not to mess with the time machine? Well, Matchstick here.
It was your idea.
Whatever. Listen, Davy Crockett needs some help.
God, I love Ben so much. I love him so much, dude. The book ends with the team coming together to take on another adventure as a family. I remember making it to the last panel of this book for the first time, and I just walked out of it with a completely new perspective on the Fantastic Four as characters. I'm sure that was writer Mark Waid's goal with his run, which brought forth a new era for the team. He decided to stop putting the heroic theatrics of the characters front and center, and instead decided to put his focus on the family aspect of the team. This would go on to be a mainstay for Fantastic Four comics up until today. In retrospect, that was the whole point of the team's appeal in the first place. They were Marvel's first family. But somewhere down the line, that aspect became more and more forgotten to the point where the characters became parodies of themselves. I personally don't pick up Fantastic Four comics to see them go up against Doctor Doom or Galactus. I pick up a Fantastic Four comic because I want to be a part of their family. I always looked at comics as a way to escape my reality and enter a completely new one full of unpredictable adventure. I'm sure that those of you watching this video can relate to that. We all have that one piece of media that we treat as our safe place. Our comfort zone we can go to in case things in the real world ever get too tough to bear. When I read Fantastic Four, or watch their movies, or play their video games, I see myself in every character. I see people who love each other. I see people whom I aspire to be like. When I see the Fantastic Four, I don't see superheroes. I see a family. And I think that's beautiful. Woo! Second video out the way. Oh my god. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys so very much for your love and appreciation on the last video. I was not expecting the amount of traction that it gained and the amount of positivity that came out of it. I really hope that this video lives up to it and somehow exceeds it. I want every video that I make to be better than the one before, and I know that's sometimes an impossible task, but I want to use this channel to express myself creatively, and I feel like if I'm not challenging myself with every video, then what's really the point, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just want to thank you guys again. It means the world to me. I want to thank my buddy Joe, who voiced Ben in the comic dub section of this video. I really love doing the comic dubs. I really like the one I did previously. I doubt this one's gonna live up to that one, but, you know, I still love doing them. Who gonna stop me? You can't stop me! But yeah, I think that'll do it. I have my next video planned out. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to release. We're going to be talking about a movie, a certain Marvel movie. I'll just leave it at that. But I really don't know what else to say other than thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the love and support. It truly means the world to me. Thank you for watching this video. I don't know when the next video will be, but I will keep you guys updated. Thank you guys so much. I love you guys. Yeah, I'll see you in a bit. I feel like I didn't capitalize enough on the whole Ben Grimm meme, so how can I cap this all off? I know you know what time it is.